So good afternoon and welcome to our latest webinar, Taking the Headache Out of Payroll. I'll start with some introductions. My name is Darren Moore and I'm Group Commercial Director at TaxAssist.
Hi, I'm Sam Skyring and I'm the Group Training and Communications Manager.
So we're going to be talking you through a number of different payroll related points. I'm going to start with a quick disclaimer. We are just giving some generic guidance here, as always. Specific circumstances are key, so you will need to seek specific advice around your own position, but we'll just give you an overview on a number of different topics, so just something you have to explain at the start. Before we go on, a welcome to those of you that are the clients of TaxAssist. Thank you for joining us, as I say. For those of you that aren't, just a very quick introduction. So TaxAssist is a network of accountants across the UK, running out of about 380 locations, and we look after around 80,000 small business clients. And payroll is a significant part of what we do, as you can imagine, as a network. So we're sharing our experiences really across that network for your benefit. Sam and I both work in a support centre that's there to support the entirety of that network and their client base. So that's our position and that's our perspective on this. But we're going to be going through a number of things that are payroll related. And we're doing this because payroll is quite challenging, can be quite complicated, as Sam will demonstrate as we go through. And it's something that worries an awful lot of employers. There are millions of employers across the UK, big and small, and payroll has become increasingly complicated over the years. So there's a lot for us to go through here, really. So we're going to talk about key aspects of payroll and what you have to do, talk about how you streamline the process, because it can be time consuming. So we'll talk about some ideas we have to try to help you. We'll talk about software. Over the years, software has become a bigger part of all of our lives for lots of reasons, including around payroll, and there are lots of different options now. So we'll give you some ideas about how you can choose the right software that will help you. We can then talk about some of the different options you have to run your payroll. Yes, you can run it directly yourself, of course, but there are other ways where you can perhaps get help. You can what we call outsource your payroll. And there are different pros and cons, different benefits of doing that. So we'll look through how outsourcing might be able to help you. And then we'll wrap up with just a quick update on what TaxAssist specifically can do around that outsourcing and that payroll piece. So a fair bit to get through, but I will start by passing over to Sam, who'll go through the first subjects.
Lovely, thanks Darren. Right, so what do you have to actually do in payroll is the first thing that we're going to look at. So responsibilities to your employees. So hopefully it speaks for itself. You want to pay your employees accurately and on time. Now, we all know that, especially in payroll, there are so many deadlines and the deadlines aren't actually that far apart. You know, obviously this depends on how often you pay your employees. You could pay them weekly, fortnightly, monthly, 4 weekly even. So again, that will dictate different deadlines. So keeping on top of that can be quite a challenge at the best of times. There's obviously various legislations that you have to obviously legally adhere to. So such things like national minimum wage and various other statutory requirements that you have to pay your employees at a certain level. Apply tax code changes. Now, for those of you that are new, maybe haven't too much experience, what this means is basically everyone here in the UK is given a tax code, which dictates how much tax-free personal allowance they get. And also it will indicate if there's anything that's affecting that specific tax-free amount. And that is a tax code, and that's what tells your software or tells the individual calculating the payroll exactly what tax-free amount that individual gets. So what HMRC do is they will actually issue what we call tax code changes, either at the start of the year or throughout the year, if any of an employee's personal circumstance changes. And again, it's your responsibility as an employer to ensure that you adopt those changes on your software so that it's constantly kept up to date and is accurate. As I've sort of touched on before, statutory payments. So with statutory payments, there's a wide variety. So you have statutory maternity, you have statutory paternity, you have statutory adoption, you have shared parental leave, is the sort of newest one, and you also have statutory sick pay as well. So they all come with their own sets of rules and regulations, and they are what we call, I always refer to them as the statutory minimums. They are the legal minimums you have to do with your employees. Obviously, as an employee, you can decide to go above and beyond should you wish to, but they are the statutory legal minimum. So, and you have to pay them. But with a lot of them, I'll exclude statutory sick pay from this, but with all the parental related statutory payments, there is actually government funding behind it. You can actually reclaim those amounts, okay? But you still have to process them in the right way. You obviously legally have to provide your employees with what we call pay slips, and obviously they should dictate, how many hours the employee works, what their hourly rate is if they had one, obviously their salary if they have one, any deductions such as pension contributions, the tax and the national insurance has been deducted, and anything else that's gone through the payroll. You'll also have to issue each employee every single year P60s. Now, this is actually quite relevant at the moment, because these legally have to be issued at the end of a tax year, which ends on the 5th of April. So we've just gone past the end of a tax year, but they have to be in your employees' hands by the end of May. So we're coming up to that deadline now. So hopefully this is just a gentle reminder, if you are doing payroll, make sure your employees have those P60s in their hands by the end of the month. And lastly, hopefully you don't have to worry too much about these, but P45. So P45s are when an employee leaves your employment. They are required to be given a P45 form, which is simply a form showing the employee's details, the pay they've earned in your employment, the tax they've suffered, the national insurance they've suffered, etc., etc. And that then helps the employee pass those details on to their new employer, so they can make sure their tax and everything else is correct and kept up to date. Okay, and again, that's another legal form that they should be supplied with. And that's more sort of the employee side of things, of what they expect. But as an employer, obviously you have the responsibilities to make sure the employees meet all their responsibilities and have everything they need. But you also have obviously added extras that only you as the employer have to worry about. So the first one we have on screen is RTI submissions, and that stands for real-time information. Okay, now these have to go. You've got two different types of submissions in payroll. You have what we call an FPS, which stands for full payment submission, or an EPS, which stands for employer payment submission. Now, hopefully the clue's in the name. In an EPS, an employer payment submission, that only has to go when there's something that affects the employer's payment of the taxes and national insurances over to HMRC. The FPSs, the full payment submissions, they are actually to do with reporting the employee's pay and any deductions over to HMRC. Okay, so two different types. Now the FPS submission has to go on or before every single pay date. So obviously if you pay your employees weekly, you will have 52 submissions, sometimes 53. Bit of a quirk, I won't go into that now, but it can happen. Okay, with an EPS, it only has to go if there's something that affects the employer's payment. So again, you might have a few of those, you might not, very dependent on the circumstances. Legislation updates for payroll. So as again, those of you that have been involved in payroll will know this, every single tax year, there's always something that changes, okay? It could be the tax-free personal allowance, it could be the national insurance thresholds, and specific new tax code changes could come in, etc., etc. Minimum wage requirements will change. A whole host of different things will change. Statutory payment thresholds will change, the amounts will change, etc. So every single tax year, we have to get familiar with all those changes coming in and make sure that we are adopting all of those changes, because we don't want to fall foul of any of these legal requirements, okay? So, you can see we're starting to build a picture. There's a lot of things we need to keep on top of when it comes to payroll. One of the biggest changes to come in recent years was automatic enrolment. Now, obviously, I know several years ago before it came in, it sort of brought fear into everyone's eyes and heads, but hopefully people are now starting to get used to it. So automatic enrolment is pensions. Okay, the government brought it in because they wanted everyone to start saving for their own retirements more independently, and the only way that they could sort of hopefully forcibly encourage, I dare say, employees to do that was to make it a requirement on the employers to make sure their employees do it. There's obviously a very specific set of rules and regulations that come within that of what you must comply with, from things like every single pay period, monitoring your employees' eligibility criteria. Does it suddenly bring them into automatic enrolment, etc.? What's happening with the pension contributions level? Do they need to be adjusted? Have you got employees that have decided to opt out or leave the pension scheme? You're going to have to adjust for those changes. So all these different things within that you have to bear in mind. And again, If you're a new employer, you have to go as far as looking for an actual pension scheme and things like this, and enrolling workers, or your employees as we call them, into a pension scheme potentially. So lots of different things to worry about when it comes to that. Record keeping. Now, hopefully, may seem like the easiest side of things, but I can't stress this enough. As you can see on screen, you have to keep records 3 years from the end of the tax year to which they relate as a minimum. Okay, that's because at any point, obviously, HMRC could launch an investigation. They could do it randomly. They could do a spot check. They may spot something they just want clarification on, but they could ask to see some payroll records, and in which case you need to make sure you've got all those, whether in digital or paper form, to obviously hand over to HMRC if they want to check. So just make sure you keep on top of all that. And that is everything. So that's for when you onboard new employees, and they may fill out what we call starter checklists. It could be pre-45s that new employees hand you from previous jobs, pay slips, the tax and NI that's been paid, the pension contributions that you've paid, statutory payments that you've made, etc. Any forms, like P11Ds or anything else that may also kind of creep into the payroll side of things. So just be wary of all those and make sure you keep everything. It sounds simple, right? I'm laughing while I'm saying that, and I do that intentionally because it really isn't. There are ways to make it simpler, but payroll just isn't simple. It hasn't been for years. There's been so many changes and so many things that we have to keep on top of nowadays, because the reason payroll is so difficult is, it's the employers that are having to do it and having to comply, but you've also got to look after your employees, and it affects their pay and their take-home pay. That's their livelihood. Okay, so if something goes wrong with that, then obviously the frustrations, the anger will move up the channel. The employer is then angry because their employees aren't happy. They potentially risk losing them. That could then impact their business. So it really can have a negative impact, going up the chain. So it is worth, making sure we get things right and trying to make it as simple as possible so that we can deal with it. But you can see some of the issues we have to deal with in payroll. Last minute changes. Happens all the time. Something slipped through the net, they forgot something, an employee didn't give you their timesheet on time, they've amended their timesheets or hours or anything like that. It might be you're several months down the line and you suddenly spot something wasn't quite right in an earlier pay period, so you need to correct it, you need to put things right. Dealing with our beloved employees. We love our employees, they help and grow our businesses, but at the same time they come with their own problems, their own headaches. And it is a very sort of managing people, and it can be quite a tense thing to talk about when you're talking about pay. So naturally, people are slightly more alert when it comes to things like this. Pension experts, again, because of lovely automatic enrolment coming in a few years ago, suddenly all the payroll professionals out there are suddenly having to become pension experts, which wasn't ever on our initial remits, but it's been forcibly put on us. So we're having to look at this and branch out into this new area. So let's look at a few tips to streamline your payroll function. So these are just a few, I think it's just 3 tips that just to get you thinking about how actually we can make this slightly stressful and quite long-winded process a bit simpler, a bit easier to digest. So templates for data entry, go paperless, and connections. So let's have a look at all these in a bit more detail. So the templates mainly revolves around consistency. So when you're gathering employee payroll data, because it might be your employees filling timesheets, their hours fluctuate all the time, there's certain bonuses or commission payments that suddenly have to go in alongside their standard salary, generally any changes. Where possible, you want to have one process. You don't want employees sending you an email with whatever changes they think is required. Because then, if you've got a larger payroll, you're going to have, let's say you've got 50 employees, 50 different emails, all different changes, left, right, and center. You're going to have to literally sit and read every single one of those emails in detail and double and triple check that when you come to do the payroll, you've carried across that information correctly. Whereas if you have one set form, one set process for how everyone reports the information to you, it will make your life so much easier. You'll be able to clearly see exactly what changes you need to make. They will stand out more. It will be easier to check. And you probably can even come into a system that sort of combines all the data just to make your life easier. I can't stress this enough. Make sure you have a very clear payroll cut-off date with your employees. If you are relying on anyone giving you potential changes and adaptations to the payroll, have a date. So let's say you run your payroll at the end of every single month. Say the last day of every month is pay date. You will probably want to have a payroll cut-off date of somewhere in the region of the 20th to the 25th of each month. Okay, so that it gives you enough time for everyone to submit their requests by that deadline. You then have still several days to get the payroll processed, finalised, completely ticked off, sent to the bank, and the bank to then obviously register it all to pay your employees on that last day of every single month. Okay, so stick to those dates and be vigilant. Make sure your staff are aware of what needs to go on there. Set dates for employee queries. Sounds a bit of a quirk, but what tends to happen with payroll, unless you've got a very straightforward payroll where everyone's on a salary and nothing tends to change, you probably don't need to worry about this. But if you have adjustments and things change and things move and you might have a larger organisation, set aside a few days, maybe towards the beginning of the month, where you say to employees, look, if you've got any queries to do with, your pay slips, your pay, your tax code, understanding your tax, understanding your pensions, anything at all, then on these dates you can approach us and we have time to go through this with you. Okay, you do not want weird and wonderful queries such as, well, what does my tax code mean, coming to you when you're at the end of the month busily trying to get the payroll ready and get it out the door. Okay, so look at things like that to help. And again, having this consistency, these standard steps, these standard dates in place will help reduce processing errors in the long run. Online functions going paperless. So you've probably seen on pretty much most platforms nowadays, we're always encouraging people to look at paperless options, okay? And the same goes for payroll. We want paper off our desk, we want to, help the environment, go green, do our bit to save the planet as well. It all factors into it. But also, saving money as well. Why have paper? Why pay for paper when you don't have to? So things like, looking at processes that don't involve paper, electronic forms and submissions, etc. Potentially will save admin, as you can see, potentially saving postage, stationery costs, and also office space. You don't want to be paying for office space, with rents and rates going up as they do every single year, when actually you're just filling it up with unnecessary paperwork. It's not needed. HMRC don't require you to keep your records in paper form, so don't. Free up that space. Use that for, whether it's in an office, another few desks for an extra staff member. That would be really good. So you don't have to look at getting a bigger premise. At the end of the day, your business is there to run a business. It's not there for storage. So consider those. And then this leads nicely on to the next one, software. Software plays a big part in payroll, and we'll talk about that more, I think, in the next section. But software connections, okay? So again, it depends on what sort of involvement you have in payroll. You might be taking it a bit further and sending the information across to what we call an accountancy software or bookkeeping software, or your finance department, etc. But it's always good to have these digital links. You don't want to have to manually download data from payroll to then sit and key it in on another accountancy platform somewhere else. That could lead to errors, you mistype things, etc. Things get, moved around when they shouldn't do, and it leads to a whole host of problems. Whereas actually, with a lot of payroll softwares now, you can connect them up to those bookkeeping products, accountancy softwares, etc. Just by clicking a button, it will send it through. And I will also add for pensions and auto enrolment. Pretty much every pension scheme out there now that deals with automatic enrolment will have a function that you can connect your payroll software up to it, to just click a button and it will send the information directly across. Okay, and that is so time saving. I know, it might just take a few extra minutes to manually key that data in, but when you're doing it every week, every month, time in, time out, it all adds up, and you need that time to focus on your business. So look out for these sorts of connections because they will make your life easier in the long run. how the right software can help. So as I said, let's actually look at the software to see what it can do to ease things for you. So the right software for you, easy to use. Now, every software out there, as we all know, there are a million different types of software in the same field all over the place. And again, same with payroll, there's lots of different options out there. You have to find one that is easy to use for you. Okay, there's no point complicating things. If you don't want any bells and whistles, you don't want any bells and whistles. So, you know, you have to figure out what do you want to get out of it, and then find the software that fits with you. And also you want to look at not just you, but potentially your employees as well, because a lot of these products nowadays can come with a cloud function, either like an add-on or as part of the actual software itself. And what that means is that your employees could have a cloud portal to receive their pay slips in. So again, if that's a function that you're looking for, which I would highly recommend because it is very clever, but also you want your employees to easily be able to use it. You don't want to take on a new software and then have to train all of your staff on how to open a pay slip. You need something intuitive and relatively simple to use. Okay. Saves you time. I cannot stress this enough. With a good, solid software, if you get it set up properly, you can go paperless, because a lot of these software, especially the cloud softwares, have this functionality to upload data via their cloud solutions, their cloud portals, direct to the payroll processor, so they can easily submit. There's no paper trail. It's all stored within the software. The communications are there. You process the payroll, you click a button, all the connections happen, stuff goes off to the pension provider, gets submitted to HMRC, you can send it across to the bank, your employees get paid, and your employees can then log on to their employee portals and see their pay slips. Okay, and all that is click of buttons. There's no paper, there's no backwards and forwards. It should be relatively straightforward, so it will save you time. I will just warn you, if you are looking at a new software and considering it, it's never going to be perfect from day one. As with any software, you're going to have to sort of get trained on it. You're going to have to figure out how it's going to work for you and your business. And, there might be a little bit of onboarding and training for staff, hopefully minimal. So it will take a bit of time to begin with. But once you fully understand how it works and it's starting to work efficiently, overall, it will save you so much time. Okay, so do make sure you look out for that. And as I kind of alluded to before, make sure it suits your needs. What do you want out of your software? Some of them nowadays are fantastic. Your staff can book holidays through it. They can log any sick days through it. You can keep track of all forms and processes within it. And that communication piece can happen through the software. So you've got that audit trail of everything that's happened. And again, by the software actually becoming your audit trail, it's doing all your record keeping for you, because it's all in one place, so you are 100% compliant with HMRC in that respect. Okay, timesheet recording, if your product may do that if you use timesheets. If you look out for a product that has that functionality, rather than employees having to input or send you data across, if the timesheets are in it, it will just automatically drop it out and probably pre-populate the pay slips in the payroll process. So, peace of mind, software's done it all for you. You just have a sense check, click go, you're done. Price, okay? Like any bit of kit, it's always going to come with a cost. And again, depending on the functionality you want, obviously the more functionality, the higher the cost, as a general rule of thumb. However, take it with a pinch of salt. Yes, it's going to cost you money, and that initial outlay and ongoing cost may be a bit like, oh, I don't know if I want to be paid for that. But remember the time it's going to save you. Okay, work that out. How much time could you save once you're up and running each pay period? Times that by how many payrolls you do in a year, whether it's weekly, monthly, etc. And then you'll start to get a true picture of how much time you could save. And your time should outweigh the initial cost. Okay, it does in most scenarios. Okay, so don't be put off by that initial investment. So that's roughly sort of looking at the different areas and hopefully giving you a few hints and tips to bear in mind if you are doing payroll or new to it. Let's look at an outsourcing possibility. Okay, so what is payroll outsourcing? So this is where you say, as a business, do you know what? I don't want, I'll put a name to her, we'll call her Jane. Let's say Jane runs your payroll. She does it all. You know, she's very good, but she could be doing other things. You know, she could be doing bookkeeping, she could be doing admin, she could be reception, she could be involved in your sales process somewhere. You know, all different areas. And you may decide, actually, do you know what? I want to free Jane up. We don't want the hassle of running payroll in-house. We're struggling to keep on top of the legislation changes. You know, we're worrying about if we're compliant or not. We've got all these deadlines to meet. Our employees are all over the place. We can't always answer their queries because we don't understand it enough and don't understand the rules enough. So as such, we want to get rid of the headache, okay? That's the biggest thing with payroll. Let's get rid of the headache, okay? Let's save you time, okay, to focus on the business. You can then outsource your payroll to an external payroll provider. This is what outsourcing is. They are, you know, a team of experts that will then run all of your payroll. Now, you can obviously liaise with a payroll outsourcer to what degree you want them to look after it. It could just be a bit of processing. You could want your whole function removed and outsourced. Depends on what you need. As we say there, it could be that end-to-end process. So, you know, if you wanted to outsource everything, you know, they could actually take over talking to your employees, communicating with them, retrieving any information in relation to the actual payroll that's needed, answering any queries, addressing any issues that they may have. They could do all of that for you. They are a dedicated team with experience. All outsourced payroll providers are dedicated. They have a team of people that are specialists in payroll. They've normally done it for years, in and out, and they know it like the back of their hands. Okay, so any question that comes up, they would be able to answer and point you in the right direction. So what can outsourcing actually do? So you can see a list on screen. So everything to do with your payroll. So processing your payrolls accurately and on time, looking after new starters, looking after leavers, working out prorated calculations. If you have an employee start partway through a month or leave partway through a month, etc., that can affect things and the calculations can get quite complicated. Also looking at calculations if someone leaves or starts in relation to their holiday. What is their holiday entitlement? Because you may need to prorate that. Looking at and working out statutory payments, you know, what is someone going to be eligible for? What amounts are they going to get? What criteria do they have to meet? What do I have to do with HMRC? How do I tell them? You know, what refunds do I get from HMRC? How does all that work? File your RTI submissions, so both your FPS and your EPS submissions to HMRC. They can look after all of that for you. And obviously they will be very aware of the deadlines that relate to this. So they will make sure that they get those processed on time and submitted on time for you. Deal with the pension side of things. So I'll put pension uploads on there, but it's anything to do with pensions. It could be, you know, activating the new pension scheme in a payroll software, making sure that the contributions link up and that it marries to what the actual pension scheme dictates, making sure those contributions are uploaded and any new employees get uploaded to the pension systems, you know, processing any opt-outs that the pension scheme kicks back, etc. Again, I think this is one of the key ones really for me is answering employee questions. They can deal with your employees because they are payroll professionals, specialists. They've got a wealth of knowledge and experience. There isn't a question that they haven't come across, you know, so they will be best placed to answer any employee queries that they may have. Obviously, because they know what they're doing, they will ensure compliance. They will spot anything changing on the horizon. They can give you an indication of, you know, actually, do you know what, these changes are coming in? It might be minimum wage going up. It might be statutory payments going up. The thresholds of tax and national insurance are increasing. And they will actually be able to feed back roughly what those, you know, the costs to you are going to be of those changes coming into force to help you plan and figure out what, you know, what your costs are going to be in relation to your staff. And then at the bottom, I've just put everything payroll related because they know this this area. It is a specialist area. They know it inside and out. So there isn't something that they couldn't help you with in relation to anything to do with payroll. So gives you that breathing space, that peace of mind that basically all of that worry and stress is taken off you and is passed on to someone else. So let's take a look at the general sort of benefits and points to consider when you may be seriously thinking about outsourcing. So with the actual benefits, there are several. So the first one there saves you time. Obviously, if you haven't got to do the job, that then instantly frees up your time. Nice and straightforward, lovely. What it will also do is it will keep you up to date with legislation changes. Again, because payroll outsourcers are focused in this one area, that's all they really keep their eyes on, is anything to do with payroll. They will always make sure that they know exactly what's happening, when it's happening, and they will be talking to you, communicating with you, telling you, what's coming in, what's changing, when those changes come into effect, what impact it's going to have on you and your business, and also the impact it may have on your employees, to help address any queries and concerns that the employees may have, especially if they've seen something on the news, they might not understand it. That team can help with that. You get the experience, of a team of payroll processes. So rather than you trying to figure this out, or you may have employed someone that, you've sort of been dabbling in and out of it, but they don't really know maybe 100% what they do. They might not have the dedicated time to focus on this. That's when potentially mistakes can be made. That's why a team of, payroll specialists will obviously eliminate that risk. Cost effective. Now, obviously, like anything, if you obviously want to give up doing something, you basically want to outsource it to these payroll providers. Obviously, they're not going to do it for free, but they will obviously charge a cost. But obviously, that cost is obviously their time. It's the fact that they're using a software that I would add is another key selling point, and they'll be using a good, efficient software that can do everything you want it to do. But if you weigh all that up to, again, the time that you're saving, the fact that you haven't got to pay anyone to do payroll, you haven't got to take time stressing and worrying about what's happening here, what do I need to do here, when's that next deadline coming around the corner, how do I comply with all this, am I at risk of non-compliance here? All of that is taken away. So basically you hand it over, you then do not have to worry about it, okay, if that's the setup you want. And as a result, you should see that even though there's a cost to this service, it should be in line with, actually, do you know what, I'm actually getting more back. Because I'm getting this time back, I can now focus on business growth, I can sell more, I can adapt my business, I can restructure, I can save money in other areas, I can basically make a more profitable business because I've outsourced my payroll, okay? I know I make it sound easy, but you can get there. Lets you focus on your business, absolutely key. Why do you want to waste time in one very small area of your business, worrying about what's going on, when all you should be doing is focusing on your actual business, the area that you're good at, that you're comfortable with, that you want to grow, you want to develop? That's where you need to spend your time. So focusing on your business is key. And then I can't stress enough, peace of mind. I don't want to scare anyone because payroll, it is doable. Software can help, but it is a challenge. In the world that we live in at the moment, everything is changing all the time, okay? And it is an ask for you guys who, maybe haven't been involved in payroll before or aren't specialists in that particular field. There is a risk, okay? So by outsourcing it, it gives you that peace of mind, okay, from day one. Points to consider, like when you're doing everything, yes, there's always the good. And I never like to call them, cons or anything like that, because they're not. They're just points you need to factor in. So the first one is control. So you are going to outsource your whole payroll function. Therefore, you are losing physical hands-on control of running your payroll. Okay, so it is an adjustment piece. Okay, those payroll professionals, I can guarantee, will be doing a fantastic job. They will be doing everything they should be. Everything will be compliant, but you physically lose that control. And that can be quite uncomfortable for some people. I do understand that. So it is a learning curve. You have to adapt how you are, and you have to learn to trust them. Okay, so it is a bit of an adaptation there. It is a big change. Okay, there's no two ways about it. You're used to doing it all. You know how things have worked. You've got this process in your head. You've now handed it over to somewhere where you haven't got that control. You haven't got that day-to-day overview of, it is a big change. It's something you're going to have to adjust to. Cost. Now, as much as I strongly believe that outsourcing a payroll is very cost efficient in the long run, there is still that initial cost, without a shadow of a doubt. So you do have to factor that in. Yes, you are going to get that cost back, and I would argue plus a hell of a lot more, because you haven't got to worry about payroll, but there is still a cost that you're going to have to factor into your cash flows. You're running a business, every cost you need to be taking account for. You need to plan for it. You need to work out where it's going to sit, when it's going to come out of your bank, etc., just to make sure that you understand that, know the consequences. Communication. Okay, so at the end of the day, if you wanted to outsource the whole lot, your whole payroll, and you want the communications to be done directly from the employees to your payroll provider, then obviously you are losing insight into what's happening with the employees. Some employers like that, some don't. Now, again, this is something that you could talk to your payroll outsourcer about, and you may decide, actually, do you know what? I still want to be part of that communication piece. I want to be the one telling you what's going on with my employees because I want to maintain that relationship. That's absolutely fine. That's just something you need to consider, how you want the relationship to work, and then the outsourcer will obviously accommodate your needs and your desires. And lastly, but not least, training. As I said, because you are going to, if you outsource all of your payroll, obviously you won't potentially have much training to worry about, but obviously, because a lot of these providers, they work in a certain way, they have certain processes, they use maybe a different technology than you've never used before, in which it may well come with, hopefully, a nice cloud portal for both you as the employer and your employees. And as a result of that, there's a learning curve. There is going to be some training required there. So you are going to have to factor in that it's going to take a bit of time to get used to. You might have to figure your way around. Now, again, with the outsourcers, they will offer you training. They will give you guidance on how to navigate and understand their systems, how they want things submitted, what's the best way to do things, etc. They will guide you through all that, okay? So, excuse me, don't be afraid to ask them if you're unsure how anything works, because they will train you. But again, with this big change, you're not going to suddenly get it overnight. So you do need to factor this into your overall processes, that it may take a few pay periods to just get used to this new way of doing things. Okay. And then I will hand over to Darren.
Sam, thank you so much for doing that. And Sam's been working in payroll for many years, not too many years, Sam, but it's really useful to have that insight and the benefit of Sam's experience. So thank you for doing that. So, outsourcing. Sam's talked about the opportunities around outsourcing and some of the points to consider. My take on it is the two key areas there are probably time and reassurance. Life in business is difficult at the best of times, and we are in very unusual times. So time is ever more of a premium. So that saving of time for me is really important. And the reassurance, life again is complicated from a regulatory and a compliance point of view in business. And the payroll side with auto-enrollment, with RTI and the other things that Sam has talked about has become ever more complex in the last 5-10 years. So that reassurance of having somebody with that expertise behind you, helping you, supporting you, working on your behalf, I think works for a lot of small businesses. And we've certainly seen that. That outsourcing option has become ever more popular. So off the back of that, we have our own tax assist solution, as you would expect, to try and help our clients. And a number of our clients have taken advantage of that in recent times. So how can that help you? It gives you a local support that deals with all of your payroll needs in the way that Sam has outlined, but it gives you all of that through your existing relationship. And that team will help support you locally through your accounting relationship to deal with all of your payroll needs and to try and take some of that headache, as we've labeled this webinar, away from you. Behind the scenes, there is a dedicated team in the support centre here that can help our franchisees, help our accountants deliver all of these service. They're all specialists in their own right, and they can deal with queries and complex issues and a whole host of different aspects of payroll that will be relevant to your accountants locally. And there are some great software options out there, and I would really encourage you to talk to your taxist accountants about those software options. The sort of functionality that Sam's talked about with online portals, the ability to see numbers quickly, to support pay slips, to enable your employees to actually see their own position directly through that portal. That wasn't there 5 or 10 years ago. And that's a really fantastic evolution of software and the way it works. So all of those things make a difference to you as an employer, but they're a really valuable insight for your employees as well. And it just helps that relationship with them. So for lots of reasons, we've introduced a service line. So if you are interested in that, then please do talk to your taxist accountant and they can talk you through exactly how it can work. Generally speaking, things you should be talking to your accountant about, now whether outsourcing or not is right for you, there are some things that are relevant if we just move on to the next slides. So how can your accountants help you? Outsourcing is an option, and absolutely I would encourage any small business owner to think about the real cost of running their own payroll in terms of time, effort, complication, concern about being compliant. But other things that you can talk to your accountant about, generally speaking, your accountants will be there to help you understand those payroll regulations. They are complicated, ever more complicated, and year on year there are changes. So do make sure you're talking to your accountants about the latest regulations and what your obligations are as an employer. Do think about the pensions side. We're now in an environment where every employer in the land is expected to be a pension expert. Wasn't an issue 5-10 years ago, but suddenly there's this expectation that businesses are taking on that obligation. It's just another layer of red tape, if you like, that small businesses in particular are having to deal with. So again, talk to your accountants there. They should be there to support you, help you, guide you, talk about your options and make sure you're compliant. Talk to them about the outsourcing solution and factor in not just the cost, and there is a cost to it, Sam's right, there is a cost, but the key point there is value, the value of time and what the opportunity cost as such is at that time. So talk to them about how that would work from a cost point of view, how you would work with an outsourcing solution if you choose to do it, and think about other aspects of payroll that might be relevant to you, particularly on the payment side, understanding your tax obligations, when to pay, factoring into cash flow, particularly relevant at the moment in a, hopefully what is a post-COVID world. Cash flow is going to be critical to every small business. So again, your accountant has a role to play there to help you. So lots of things that we can do as tax assistant accountants, we hope to help and support you. If you're an existing client, hopefully you're already seeing how that works. If you're looking at new accounting solutions, if you're looking at payroll solutions, then hopefully this gives you an idea of just those expectations of how accountants can best support you. Thanks. So just to wrap up from our point of view, there's a lot of content there, we know. We are always happy to talk about the subject matter in more detail. You will all have a local tax assistant accountant if you're not already working with one. We are open for business. We have been throughout COVID and we remain open for business. Free telephone consultations if that works for you, or video consultations in this brave new world of software. We can meet online and you can sit down and have whatever sort of conversation you need to. Everything we do as a network of accountants is on a fixed fee basis. We don't like fee surprises. We know you certainly don't. So we will always work to a fixed fee basis just to give you that certainty and that reassurance in terms of what this may cost you. But hopefully there's some ideas there of how you might be able to talk to accountants and how we can help you. Excellent. So a lot of content there, I know. And as I say, thank you, Sam, for going through. Payroll is not a simple subject matter. We know that. We will keep this communication going out because we know there's a lot more to say on this particular topic. But we are happy to deal with any questions now. We'll just have a quick look to see if any questions have been raised. Looks like nothing for the moment. So we will wrap up there. What I would say is if you do have any questions, either on this live webinar or through watching it subsequently, please do talk to us. Please do talk to your local accountant. It is, as I say, a complex area and one that we do want to help with in terms of taking that headache away. So we're here to help you as and when you need to. Other than that, I'll just say thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate your time. Please do stay safe in these difficult times and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.